don't know about you, but I'm tired. I mean, it's been a short but very good conference, but being on all the time, day and night, and especially having to be on your best behavior, it's exhausting, right? So thank you for showing up. So Michael DeWitt, thank you for the introduction. Been with Walmart for about 5.5 years. I'm with Walmart International, so I'll talk about that a bit. You've probably heard of Walmart, maybe not so familiar with Walmart International. So Walmart International, it's its own entity of Walmart, still relatively small part. We're 22% of the $611 billion of Walmart Inc. from last year, but we are growing faster than Walmart. We're in high single digits, low double digits growth. So we hope to double our revenue in the next 5 years. So I'm going to talk today about our tech journey. And just a little bit about, this shouldn't be new to anyone here, right? But just the point being that the technology solutions, you've heard a lot about ChatGPT and Gen AI. That's still relatively new in procurement. It's still more around machine learning, natural language processing, but it's a combination. I'm starting to see more Gen AI, and I think that'll become a bigger part, but more Gen AI, more risk, and really more concern. So I think moving forward, there's going to be a balance. I think Gen AI will grow, but still we have to be careful. And one of the technologies that I'll talk about is AI negotiations. And that's where people get really nervous when you start talking about Gen AI, when you have a technology application just really free form negotiating with suppliers. For now, we have that a little bit more under control with machine learning and natural language processing, but I'll talk more about that. So you've probably seen this slide, right? Before. This is Eloise Epstein's slide, which she was just on for some of you that were in this room earlier. But you're ready to do AI in your companies, right? So where do you start? Every time that I see this, it makes me very anxious. And there's so many, even being here at DPW and seeing all the vendors downstairs, there's some that aren't even on this, right? There's new ones that have popped up I've seen for the first time. So it can be a little bit overwhelming. So hopefully I'm going to talk about what we did, and I can kind of guide you to what's made us successful, which hopefully will be helpful for you. So this, of course, we look at our end-to-end sourcing process, our source-to-pay process. We started with, several years ago, as many of you have, I'm sure, our core end-to-end solution, right? So we use SAP Ariba, which I'm sure also many of you do as well. So we still have that need for that core sourcing solution for now, I would say. I think in the future, it may become a little more obsolete where you're getting these big end-to-end solutions with a lot of integration into your systems, right? I'll talk more about that as well. But it's been good for us, and we also want to make sure that we maintain focus on getting the best out of this solution, right? So with all the new AI solutions, it can be easy to take focus off of your core solution, but don't do that because you're spending you're still getting a lot of value out of this core solution. And also SAP Ariba does a good job of investing into this solution with new innovation, finding new partners. So we do still spend a lot of time in making sure that we're getting the value out of it. Not just that people are using it, but people are getting the value out of it. We also added some RPA in, right? So repetitive processes we've focused on, especially around supplier surveys and also internal stakeholder surveys. So this continues to make our processes easier, especially where they're repetitive. So now on top of this end-to-end solution, this is where we started looking at AI solutions over the last few years. And so I'm going to start from the most recent, and then I'll go back to the ones that we've deployed several years ago. So currently, our big focus is in two areas. It's around supplier management. This one is probably the one that I'm most excited about for the future. I think that this will disrupt the way that we engage with our suppliers and really revolutionize the way that we engage with our suppliers. We are partnered with Scout B. I can mention them because they so far have been a great partner, but it's still early. If we get to the vision that we think we'll get to, really excited about it. On the back end of the source to contract process is contract lifecycle management. A lot of new AI technologies in this space. We're still zeroing in on which one that we want to move with going forward. There's a lot of options though, right? This is, I guess, fun, but not as exciting. I mean, everybody has to do better at contract management and being more proactive and seeing when contracts are going to be ending more proactively so you can roll those more into your sourcing strategies, but it's not as fun as some other areas, right? Taking one step further into time, this was 3 of the applications, technologies that we've been focused on over the last year or so. We've had some very successful pilots with these. One around should cost models. We were using should cost before that, but it really didn't have, it was more of just our own sourcing professionals having their own Excel templates, and they would gather knowledge over time based on the projects that they've done. Well, now, of course, you use AI, you can go find up-to-date information, more relevant information about how we should be breaking costs down. Bid optimization is another one. So this is Ariba and Coupa, I know, and a lot of the other end-to-end solutions can't handle complex, many line item bids, right? So this is one that we've focused on and used also very successfully. It especially does well on the analysis. So once you get all the bids in and you're trying to figure out, who should I award to, this is where it really helps you to do that. That is Kilvar. Yeah. AI contract redlining. This is exciting in that the legal teams love it. Sometimes we don't have the best relationships with legal. This helps us to make those connections with the legal team. They love this. This has saved them 80% of the time that they've spent on redlining contracts. So it does it automatically. We get a contract in, redlines it, sends it back. It's a great technology. So these are the 3 I'll focus a little bit more on that we've had for about 3 years or so. The first is around category strategy development. That's with Certuo. And then we have AI negotiation with Pactum. And then this will be new. This is one that we've been in development or co-development with GEP for about a year for an e-auction AI strategy technology. So we're excited about that. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so category strategy development with Certuo. This is a no-brainer. If you guys haven't looked at them, you need to look at them. This was one of the easiest implementations, I'll call it, even though we didn't really implement anything. We just started using it out of the box. It's easy to use. It follows best practices. It greatly enhances our category strategies that we're developing. Here's some of the impact that we've seen. So 7 to 8% savings. Well, what is that based on? I'm sure you're wondering in your mind. So we track how many sourcing projects are coming out of a category strategy, Certuo specifically, versus not. That we've seen a big increase in. But also we're tracking what is the average savings of projects that come out of Certuo versus not out of Certuo, and we track the difference there. So with those calculations, we're seeing 6 to 7% improvement. Productivity improvement takes half the time. So, that, I guess, speaks for itself. Also, through the process, you're able to really collaborate with stakeholders better because you have a more formal process. It looks more professional, and you can pull your stakeholders in during the strategy so that afterward you're not playing catch up with trying to explain to them what just happened, right? So it's it's really helped us. Now, as far as implementation goes, I mentioned it's easy, right? One reason it's easy, this is for procurement professionals, right? So this should be within many of your power because it's your own teams. You don't have to go out and talk a lot of other stakeholders into deploying this. It's something you can start using immediately. But the first step that I would say is you should have a category strategy process in place before you bring the technology in. You could bring the technology in, it's not always going to be successful. I think one of the keys to success for us, we had a great process, it followed best practice. When we saw CERT 2.0, it closely followed our process. So it was easy for our sourcing professionals to understand how to use it because they knew the methodology, they knew why it was important, right? So if you don't have a category strategy process, which hopefully you do, if you don't, just get one, right? You should have one. It's this helps us to be more strategic, right? And get us out of the tactical execution that we get stuck in with our regular procurement projects and procurement processes. Now, if you do have a good category strategy process in place, what do you think you should do then? Just do it. Again, really easy. It took several months. I rolled it out globally to our whole team. We had 100% usage from our sourcing professionals very quickly, and they love it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Pactum. I'm going to show you first just a real quick example of, it's a demo of a project that we did. So it'll just give you kind of the look and feel from a supplier's view of what they're seeing. So this particular one was for plumbing services. We negotiated the plumbing services, the prices of those services plus the payment terms. So it was kind of a dual approach in this. But you can see on the left side, it shows the process or the part of the process you're in. The right side shows the summary of where you're at, what's been introduced, what's been accepted. And then in the middle, you'll see the questions coming through. And this is based on the parameters that you worked on with the buying team, with legal, with the stakeholder team, prior to this going out. It takes about 6 weeks to set up a new scope for a negotiation, which could be thousands of suppliers. It could be for various different areas or types of negotiation factors, but then the negotiation itself takes literally minutes. So the biggest question and concern that our organization had, especially the senior leadership, what are suppliers going to think about this, right? And I was worried about this too because, we're big bad Walmart. We're no longer interested in talking to our suppliers. We're going to send out a bot and just do all of our negotiations, right? So that was the fear. The interesting thing is that 83% of the suppliers that we pulled said that they'd actually rather negotiate with the bot than a human. So this was very insightful, a bit of a surprise for me, honestly, but so that really helped us, with the fears of what do our suppliers think. And I think there's several reasons for that, right? Some are that, some of these suppliers that we're dealing with, we wouldn't be able to deal with them otherwise. So either no interaction or an interaction with a bot, they prefer interacting with a bot. But sometimes negotiating with people is intimidating, right? Especially Walmart can be intimidating. So this gives them kind of a safe space to negotiate with suppliers. It's fair. You're not, you don't have emotions in it. You don't have people raising their voices, whatever the case may be. It's consistent, right? So
maybe they have their own bot.
Yeah, I'll get to that. So use cases that we've had so far with it, transportation lane rates, payment terms, that was our first and probably simplest focus. And that can be done very broadly, very quickly, just focus on improvement in payment terms. And we've got huge returns on that very quickly. Third-party labor rates, that's what we've been focused on more recently. That's around services. So in our case, for example, I showed it to begin with, plumbing services. So how do we service our Walmart stores, right? Annual contracts, so this would be looking at a whole contract, all the elements that are negotiable in a contract. You could do parts, you can do services, you can do payment terms. So it's basically looking at a whole contract and negotiating that. Another recent one that's interesting to me is this P2P non-catalog purchase requisition. So this is if you have a buyer going into your system and buying something that doesn't have a contracted price to it, this can flag it immediately, go out and immediately negotiate a price for that specific, the best price for that specific product or service that somebody in the organization is looking for. So saves a lot of time, gets us the best price almost immediately. So one interesting thing that has also made this successful is what we say, every negotiation improves the next one. Because we're learning a lot about negotiations from this bot that we can't really get from people because it's just not as consistent, right? So for example, we know that we get a 10% higher conversion of our negotiations if we do it on a Monday versus other days. So we can roll that into, of course, we want to do now more Mondays because we're having higher success. This one's interesting too. So just based on how a supplier responds to the question of how are you, if they say okay versus great, you get a different outcome. If they say great, you're going to get a 2 times better outcome in your negotiation. And what's cool about Pactum too is that based on how they answer it, it can alter the track. So if they say great, then it will go for a higher anchor to begin with and likely get a better outcome. So it can shift during the negotiation based on the learning that we've had, just how people react to questions that are being asked. And then I think you mentioned it before, we are getting some of our suppliers now who we've negotiated with Pactum, and they come back and say, hey, we're going to start using this. So it is going to be interesting where you will have bot versus bot, right? But I think for me, the key is early adoption because of all these things that we're learning. Hopefully we're going to stay ahead of our suppliers. So, but also, I would say that we're likely never going to negotiate everything with this, bot either. I mean, we're not going to be likely negotiating very strategic partnerships, moving forward. But I think there'll always be opportunities and always be a place for it. We're also looking at, for example, which isn't on here, but just tail spend, right? So taking a portion of our tail spend and just negotiating tail spend because we don't have time to do that anyway. So success has been great. 85% success rate, meaning that 8.5 out of 10 suppliers that we send a link to negotiate with end in a successful contract as we define success. The range of savings is big, 2% to 22%. That's because of the different use cases. So the 2% is more around the payment terms, what we consider to be the savings from the payment terms. 22% is more around the transportation. It was very successful in transportation and somewhat the third-party labor rates. So I mentioned it before, but easy to deploy. Pactum does a lot of the hard work, so it takes about 6 weeks to do an area of, could be thousands of suppliers. It typically takes somebody from legal, somebody from the business unit, somebody from procurement, a few hours from each of those 3 segments over that 6-week term to be able to build the parameters and launch. And then once it launches, Pactum also takes care of really administering it, getting the results. And we also then are integrating this into Ariba as well. So once we get a successful contract, we can push it right into Ariba at that point and make it official. Okay, the next one I'll talk about briefly, e-auction. So e-auction's been around for a long time. I was actually at a company called Free Markets, which some of you may be familiar with, way back in 1999. We were the pioneers of e-auctions, right? At Free Markets, we did it really well. And then after I left Free Markets, I think over the next, 20 years, seems to me they kind of fell apart. We lost the art of how to do it, right? And suppliers got upset about it. They didn't like them because we didn't do them very well. I relaunched an e-auction program the right way a few years ago, and it's been one of the most successful programs that we've done within Walmart. And it's because the concept is simple. It's really do a good sourcing event, and then when you do the auction, that's really just a way of collecting the bids, right? And it makes it more competitive. But it depends on doing a very good sourcing project up front. And that's what we focus on. So we've been successful, you can see, in every category. And since inception, more than half of all the sourcing projects we do go through e-auction. And this 18% savings, that's since inception, that's the average. Now that does include what we call budget and non-budget. So that does include cost mitigation. Cost mitigation is typically about 1/3 of the savings we get, and budget savings, which is close to last price paid or P&L savings, that's about 2/3 of the savings. So highly successful program. So if you haven't done e-auctions, that's the first thing I would suggest is put a program together, but also do it the right way. And then we've been working with GEP, partnering with them over the last year to create an AI auction strategy builder. So this will help all of our sourcing professionals to build the best strategy specifically for an auction. So we're excited about this one too. We should be launching this soon. Okay, so what are some of the keys to success with deploying AI technologies? Number one, I think the most important thing that we did was have a dedicated team in place to do this. Because if we sat around and waited for our tech team to focus on AI technologies, it would never happen. They have too many other things to do to just keep things running within the organization, right? So I hired a director at the time, now senior director, just to look at procurement-enabled technologies and to help us to get more value out of them in the case of Ariba, but also then be on the lookout for the best AI technologies out there, and then internally do the selling of those technologies, get people excited about it, help them to utilize those technologies, report the results, and so forth. So that's one. Two, find like-minded pioneers, right? There's always going to be people that don't want to do it, but there's always going to be people that do want to do it. So find those people that are interested and excited about it, do pilots with them, and expand from there, which is the third one, right? And then number four, I say rinse and repeat. It's interesting because some of the technologies are easier to get the buy-in. So Certuo, as an example, because it's just procurement, that was easy. Pactum, it's a no-brainer, right? Why wouldn't you do it? The results that you're getting are great. And we've done so many projects on it that have been successful, but it's still a continuous sell internally to get people to use it. And we spend a lot of time and effort doing that because typically it's hard to find, one person that is responsible for large areas of spend. So it's hard to find those champions, but don't underestimate the time that it takes to continue to really sell these technologies internally, even though we're getting huge success. So people are excited about it, people love it, but it's still hard to get people to actually do it. So future of AI and procurement, I just had a few thoughts here. One, I think key is going to be real-time information, right? This is the key, is we're going to be able to see insight. So COVID, for example, when COVID first started happening and masks and toilet paper, it caught us off guard, right? Who would have thought toilet paper was going to be so hard to find? This will allow us, AI will allow us to see what's happening, get trends very quickly, and allow us to act quickly and get ahead of our competitors on securing some of that supply, right? So this will really help us getting that real-time information. Of course, writing RFIs, RFPs, that's going to be big using a Gen AI. It sounds like a no-brainer. I don't think it's going to be as easy as it sounds. I think it's going to be difficult because we all know that every RFP has its nuances. You have to learn, somewhat what's special about that product or that service over time. So I think if we take that knowledge, if we have that knowledge from our procurement professionals in specific commodity category service areas, and we can load that up, that will help. But it's not going to be easy, but I see it happening over the next few years. And then this procurement technology portal. So I mentioned it before. I think technologies with heavy implementation are going to be obsolete. I think that there will be cockpits that connect to data, both inside your company and outside the company, to find the best data anywhere at any given time. So you're going to have a portal that connects to every other set of data. So you're not going to need to implement those into your ERP systems, for example. You just have to have a good path for those technologies to find data internally and externally. So I think that'll really revolutionize this industry as well. And then the last one, I actually asked ChatGPT if Gen AI will replace procurement people in the future. And this was a summary of their response, is that basically, no, it'll supplement, but ChatGPT doesn't see it replacing procurement professionals. So you can rest easy, I guess, there. Okay, so that's it. So I guess the closing statement would be, if you're not using AI, why not? You should be. You got to get out there, jump in. There's a lot of great technologies that are finally showing a lot of value, and they're quick, they're easy to use, and there's a lot of opportunity out there. So I guess 50 seconds for questions.
Who's your vendor partner in developing the supply portal?
Scout B. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Who is your vendor partner who developing the supply portal for Walmart?
Yeah, Scout B.
Thank you.
Thank you for the e-auction implementation. Can you elaborate on at least 3 points to make it right, as you mentioned?
For the technology portion or the actual program? The program. Well, and you're asking what makes it right? Well, I think I mentioned a couple before. If you approach it as it's got to be a good sourcing process and you're only using the auction to really drive competitiveness and collecting the bids themselves, then that's the right way to do it, right? That's the key. I would say that's probably the number one and really most important thing. And if you do it in that way, it doesn't matter what you're buying. It can be anything, because that's only the way that you're collecting the pricing, really.
How did your team react to using these tools?
How did my team react? I think mostly positive, actually. Yeah, I mean, I think that, of course, again, like Certuo, easy, right? It's going to help them to do what they're already doing anyway. Pactum, a little bit more a little bit more challenging, I guess. Some of them could think that, you're taking people, procurement people love to negotiate, and everybody thinks they're experts at negotiation, right? So some people don't like it, but enough do that it's been, you're able to get success out of it.
You talk about shoot costs, that you're getting updated information and so on. So you screen the web and you get info. So how do you take the good info from the bad, because it's a lot of qualitative info and not so much quantitative? How do you deal with that?
Are you talking about should cost specifically? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the AI helps to figure that out, right? It helps to weed out what the true cost breakdown element should be versus not. So, I mean, that's really what you depend on the AI to do, and it does a good job doing that.
What's the software you use?
Dynamics.
Seems to be a bit of an overlap, maximum key options. Where do you draw a line? Do you draw a line?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that.
The Factum technology used and the key options.
Yeah.
There seems to be some overlap, or could be some overlap. Where do you how do you differentiate?
Yeah, it's a good point. There could be overlap. Sometimes you just have to figure out which one is better. I mean, for tailspin, it's going to be, in some cases it just makes sense. Tailspin is going to be Pactum primarily. For transportation lane rates, it could be either one. We just have to figure out what is that best approach. But yeah, it's a good point. Sometimes they could overlap.
That's all the time we have with Michael. I know it's been super insightful talk. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us.